Welcome back. I'm Andrea, and this is Exposed News Outlet, the show that doesn't look away when things get uncomfortable. And baby, this week, things got very uncomfortable. We're talking about a sitting president posting profanity-laced threats on Easter Sunday. We are talking about war crimes, warnings from legal scholars. We are talking about a ceasefire that may already be collapsing. We're talking about a fired attorney general dodging a federal subpoena. A first lady denying a friendship that is documented in federal files. And a Congress that is finally starting to crack. If you are new here, welcome. And you picked quite a week. If you've been riding with me, you already knew this was coming. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell, because this is the kind of news they don't want you to see all in one place. Let's get to it. To understand the madness of this week, you need to know what led up to it. On February 28th of this year, the United States and Israel launched a surprise military campaign against Iran called Operation Epic Fury, striking military and industrial targets across the country. Fortunately, some civilian targets as well. Iran immediately responded by effectively closing the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway that carries roughly 1/5 of the world's entire oil and natural gas supply. The closure triggered an immediate global energy shock. Oil prices soared, shipping was thrown into chaos, and critics, including many in Trump's own circle, began pointing to the timing. Because the Iran war launched just as the Epstein files scandal was boiling over. Some people had even started calling it Operation Epstein Distraction. I'll let you draw your own conclusions. But I will note that the connection has been made by journalists across the political spectrum. It was suspect. Let me show you this clip.
We begin tonight here with the breaking news, the U.S. and Iran, and tonight the White House acknowledging this is a fragile ceasefire, and it's already being tested tonight. Just hours after President Trump announced the 2-week ceasefire, Iran then saying it had closed the Strait of Hormuz. The White House had demanded Iran open the critical passageway. Iran closing the strait, blocking oil tankers from going through as Israel unleashed a sprawling attack on Lebanon. President Trump saying Lebanon is not included in this ceasefire deal, calling it, quote, a separate skirmish. Tonight, a gallon of gas in the U.S. now at $4.16 a gallon, up $1.22 since this war began. And the Strait of Hormuz remains closed. So what next? Mary Bruce leads us off from the White House.
The White House says the, quote, fragile ceasefire with Iran is holding, but tonight President Trump's key condition remains unmet, Iran refusing to reopen traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. Still, Vice President J.D. Vance, who is now leading negotiations, insists, quote, fundamentally, we're in a good spot.
No ceasefire ever goes without a little bit of choppiness.
Iran says it will not reopen the strait because they say the U.S. has gone back on what they claim was a key element of the truce, that Israel would stop bombarding Iranian-backed Hezbollah targets in Lebanon. Today, Israel unleashing a sprawling barrage of more than 100 attacks on the Lebanese capital Beirut, the most since the war began, killing at least 180 people, more than 1.2 million people displaced in the conflict. Iran's foreign minister declaring the world sees the massacres in Lebanon. The ball is in the U.S. court, and the world is watching whether it will act on its commitments. But Vance today saying Lebanon was never part of the ceasefire deal.
I think this comes from a legitimate misunderstanding. I think the Iranians thought that the ceasefire included Lebanon, and it just didn't. We never made that promise. We never indicated that was going to be the case.
One thing is clear, Iran still controls the strait. Before the war, ships could pass through free of charge. But President Trump now telling our John Carl the U.S. and Iran could work together one day to collect tolls, saying we're thinking of doing it as a joint venture. Any arrangement like that seems a long way off, and tonight the strait remains closed. The national average price for a gallon of gas now at $4.16, up $1.22 since the war began. Economists say it could take months to fall once the strait reopens. Today, the administration also pressed to explain the president's plan for halting Iran's nuclear program and moving their more than 900 pounds of enriched uranium out of the country.
They will either give it to us, which the president has laid out. They'll give it to us voluntarily. We'll get it. We'll take it out. Or if we have to do something else ourselves, like we did in Midnight Hammer or something like that, we reserve that opportunity.
And David, those negotiations are supposed to begin in earnest this weekend in Pakistan, but the two sides are not on the same page on a host of issues. And tonight, Iran says the Strait of Hormuz remains closed. And that was President Trump's top demand when he agreed to this ceasefire, David.
So that's the backdrop. Now, let's talk about what happened this week, because it escalated in ways that genuinely shocked the world. On Easter Sunday morning, while most Americans were heading to church or preparing for family meals, the President of the United States posted an expletive-filled tirade on Truth Social, Propaganda Social, at 8 in the morning. The post threatened Iran's power plants and bridges, told Iranian leadership to, and I quote loosely here, quote, open the strait or be living in hell, end quote. And then ended with the phrase, quote, praise be to Allah, end quote. I want to be clear about what we're discussing here. This is the President of the United States on Easter Sunday, mocking Islam while threatening a nation's civilian infrastructure, including hospitals, schools, neighborhoods, and posting it between the Easter egg hunts, which, by the way, is a war crime, I might add. Let me show you this clip.
These are the same people who sort of didn't notice somehow that on Inauguration Day, the president did not take his oath of office with his hand on the Bible. His wife stood next to him holding it. I was about 15 feet away and saw it, but he did not put his hand on the Bible. And that should have been maybe a clue that we need to pause and think about, what is this? Why wouldn't you put your hand on the Bible? If you don't believe in the Bible, you think it's just a book, there's no cost to you to putting your hand on it, just kind of following the protocol, going along with the tradition. All presidents do it. Why aren't you doing it? And you're not doing it intentionally. You're choosing not to put your hand on the Bible when you take that oath. That suggests not that you don't believe it's real, because if you didn't believe it was real, why would you care? You'd put on the costume and take it off. It doesn't matter. That suggests you know it is real and you're rejecting it intentionally. You know what you're doing and you're doing it anyway. But nobody asked questions about that either. It seemed kind of inappropriate, given the celebration then in progress, to ask, why wouldn't you put your hand on the Bible when you take the oath of office to lead our nation? But pretty much nobody did. I didn't. I'll admit that. I saw it and didn't say one word. Bothered me ever since. But right around January 4th, it became clear that maybe he didn't put his hand on the Bible because he affirmatively rejects what's inside that book. And what's inside that book are limits on human behavior. Because if there's one theme that spans all 66 books in the Christian Bible, it's that you are not God. And you cannot assume his powers. Because you don't have them. You may convince yourself you have them. You may want them. You may have been promised them. But in the end, they're not yours. And you'll never have them. And you can only destroy yourself and the people around you by pretending that you do. That is the consistent message that spans from Genesis to Revelation. And people who ignore that law are punished. Just like people who ignore gravity or freezing temperatures are punished. Because these are laws that were not created by people. They supersede people. But on January 4th, when the President of the United States told us he was stealing, that our country was stealing something that didn't belong to us, people should have piped up and said something, but they didn't. And that got us all the way to yesterday, which was Easter Sunday. Easter Sunday is not just a holy day on the Christian calendar, it is the center of the Christian calendar, it is the holiest day in Christian life. because it's the day that Christians remember the whole point of their religion, which is not that Jesus was killed, but that he rose from the dead, that he beat death, unique in history. And this is the day that Christians celebrate his resurrection. And in this country, that celebration's been watered down effectively to candy and Easter bunnies. But globally, and certainly historically, Easter is the focus. It's preceded by Holy Week and Lent, 40 days of self-denial and prayer, all leading up to yesterday, Easter morning. And for faithful Christians, it is still the biggest day of the year. And it's a day of joy. The thing every person fears most is death. We're born fearing it because we're born knowing it's coming. And Christianity, unique among religions, promises victory over it. And Jesus' resurrection is proof that God can beat death because only God creates life. And so the morning of Easter is a uniquely joyful and peaceful moment. And yet that peace yesterday was shattered. That's not an overstatement. It was shattered for many observant Christians by a statement that the President of the United States put out at 8:03 a.m. Eastern time on Easter morning that said this, and we're going to read it in its entirety, not in outrage or self-righteousness, but honestly in horror. Quote, Tuesday will be power plant day and bridge day, all wrapped up in one in Iran. There will be nothing like it. 3 exclamation points. Open the fucking strait, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. All caps. Praise be to Allah. President Donald J. Trump. Now, a lot of people reading that imagined, of course, this can't be real. Did the President of the United States really just write that? And it is real. It is maybe the most real thing this president has ever done, and also the most revealing. On every level, it is vile. On every level. It begins with a promise to use the U.S. military, our military, to destroy civilian infrastructure in another country, which is to say to commit a war crime, a moral crime against the people of the country, whose welfare, by the way, was one of the reasons we supposedly went into this war in the first place. They're being killed by their government. We have to rescue them. And now here's our president, not even a month and a half into the conflict, which we are not winning, by the way, because the Straits of Hormuz are not open. There's one way to keep track. That's the measurement. Saying that we're going to use our military to kill the civilians of this country who didn't choose the war. They got nothing to do with it. They're like civilians everywhere. Blow up their bridges? Bridges on military bases? No, just bridges. Bridges that people cross every day to go to school and work and to worship, and yes, church, because there are over 1 million Christians in Iran. This is their Easter too. And power plants. Not the power plants attached to missile factories, okay, but civilian power plants in a country of almost 100 million people. What happens when a modern country, and a country that has a nuclear program as a modern country, sorry, Iran is a modern country, what happens when it loses power? Well, people die. Babies connected to incubators die. People in hospitals die. And those are the first level effects. And then people begin to starve. And then you have refugee crises. People leave the cities looking for food. And yes, they move into other countries. In the region, in Europe, in the United States, you cause chaos and death, mass suffering and death when you do that. And we have done that. We have intentionally bombed civilian infrastructure in Iran. It's totally unacceptable. Not under the phony laws of some international body, but under moral law, God's law, killing non-combatants, people who did nothing wrong, who didn't choose this war, who were just people created by God. That is immoral. That will never be moral. That can never be justified. That is always wrong.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer responded saying the president was, quote, ranting like an unhinged madman, end quote. Senator Chris Murphy said if he were in Trump's cabinet, he'd be spending Easter calling constitutional lawyers about the 25th Amendment. But here's what stopped me cold. Even Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has been one of Trump's most loyal defenders, came out and said, quote, everyone in his administration that claims to be a Christian needs to fall on their knees and beg for forgiveness from God, end quote. She said, quote, "Our president is not a Christian, and his words and actions should not be supported by Christians," end quote. And I'd have to say that I agree. Never thought I'd agree with MTG, but she's been making sense lately. Kind of strange. It's almost like she's gearing up for a 2028 run. Let me show you this clip of Marjorie Taylor Greene's statement on Trump's Easter post.
The Middle East remains tense amid this fragile temporary truce, even after President Trump backed down from his threat to eliminate a, quote, whole civilization in Iran.
And joining us now to discuss what's going on, the former Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia. Congresswoman, thanks so much for joining us. I know you recently called for the president to be removed from office under the 25th Amendment to the Constitution after that threat that he made about destroying the whole civilization of Iran. The president has a long history of shocking and unprecedented social media posts. Why was this the final straw for you?
Because it's absolute madness. How can any person that is mentally stable call for an entire civilization of people to be murdered, to be wiped out, to never come back again? That's what the president called for. And that shows that there's serious instability in his thinking, that he would, not only would he even say that in a private room, perhaps with his advisors, but actually go to his megaphone, his Truth Social, and post that for the entire country and the entire world. And it's unreal. This should never be tolerated. I know it's a very difficult, hard stretch to see it actually coming through, but the conversation needs to be had, and he's out of control. And people within the administration need to step up, take responsibility, and rein this in.
And Tucker Carlson, who speaks with Trump regularly, said on his show, quote, "How dare you speak that way on Easter morning to the country? This is a mockery not just of Islam, it's a mockery of Christianity," end quote. Let me show you this clip.
For the president to call for that, it's worth stopping and saying, no, this is not acceptable under any circumstances. You haven't justified it. You couldn't justify it. And it can't be done in our name. And the point, of course, is to get the Iranians to open the Strait of Hormuz. Well, no sane person thinks that's going to work. At which point you have to ask, why would we do it anyway? Well, there are a bunch of possible reasons, but the darkest of all is for the sake of doing it. For the sake of killing, for the sake of exercising the most obvious form of power, which is extinguishing life. That's why we're doing it. The thrill is in the killing. The power is in the killing. The exertion of force is the point. You don't want to think that. But after a message like this, what could possibly be the reason? There's nobody who thinks that if we do this, and we pray we don't, for our sake as well as the sake of non-combatant, innocent Iranians, nobody thinks this is going to work. But then the tweet continues. Pardon me, the ironically named truth continues. There will be nothing like it. Open the effing strait. How dare you speak that way on Easter morning to the country? Who do you think you are? You're tweeting out the F word on Easter morning? You'll be living in hell. As if hell is a place. Hell is a condition. And this is an example of that condition. Just watch. Praise be to Allah. So obviously you're mocking the religion of Iran. Okay. If you seek a religious war, that's a good idea. But by the way, no decent person mocks other people's religions. You may have a problem with the theology. Presumably you do if it's not your religion, and you could explain what that is. But to mock other people's faith is to mock the idea of faith itself. And we should never mock that, because at its core is the acknowledgement that we are not in charge of the universe. We did not build it. We won't be here at the end of it. We can destroy life. We cannot create it because we are not God. The message of all faith At the biggest picture level is the message in our Bible, which is you are not God. And only if you think you are do you talk this way. But it's not just mockery of Islam. And no president should mock Islam. That's not your job. This is not a theocracy. We don't go to war with other theocracies to find out which theocracy is more effective. We are not a theocracy. And God willing, we never will be, because theocracies corrupt the religion. No, this is a mockery not just of Islam, it's a mockery of Christianity. To send out a tweet with the F word on Easter morning promising the murder of civilians and then saying praise be to Allah without explaining any of it, you are mocking me and every other Christian because we're Christians. Oh, I get it. We can't support that. Under no circumstances can we support that. Doesn't mean...
That episode hit over 1 million views in one day. When you've lost Tucker and MTG on the same morning, something has gone very wrong. Monday, Trump doubled down at the Easter egg roll. Yes, with the Easter bunny literally standing beside him. And he told reporters that if Iran didn't open the Strait of Hormuz by Tuesday at 8 p.m., they would have no bridges, no power plants. He would, quote, take them back to the Stone Ages, he said. Legal scholars immediately flagged what targeting civilian power grids means under international law. Democratic Congressman Troy Carter put it plainly. Attacking civilian infrastructure that serves hospitals and schools could make a president liable for war crimes. Then, on Tuesday morning, Trump posted the words that will follow this administration into the history books. Quote, a whole civilization will die tonight, end quote. Let me show you this clip of Trump's whole civilization will die tonight. Truth Social post news coverage.
If President Trump follows through on his 8 p.m. ultimatum to destroy Iran's infrastructure, if Iran does not reopen the Strait of Hormuz by tonight, Iran says it will cut off oil and gas to the U.S. and U.S. allies for years. 3 bridges already hit this morning in Iran hours before President Trump's deadline to strike the bridges across the country. Iran also threatening infrastructure across the Middle East and now beyond. Iran's president says he is one of 14 million Iranians prepared to die defending Iran. After 4 extensions, President Trump says tonight's deadline is final and all of Iran's power plants and bridges will be decimated by midnight if Iran does not reopen the strait. The UN urging the U.S. not to strike Iran's civilian infrastructure, pointing out that it violates international law. The UN Security Council voting this morning on a resolution to protect commercial shipping through the strait.
Over 70 lawmakers, including senators, responded by calling on Trump's cabinet to invoke the 25th Amendment. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said, quote, this is a threat of genocide and merits removal from office. The president's mental faculties are collapsing, end quote. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif called Trump personally, asking for a 2-week extension and urging Iran to open the strait as a goodwill gesture. And just 90 minutes before Trump's own self-imposed deadline, a 2-week ceasefire was announced. Now let me tell you about something that happened in the middle of all of this that deserves its own story and possibly even a movie. On April 3rd, an American F-15 Strike Eagle, call sign Dude 44, was shot down over southern Iran. 2 crew members ejected. The pilot was rescued within hours. But the second airman, a colonel-rank weapons systems officer, was missing deep in the mountains of southwestern Iran, and both sides were racing to find him. Iran's state TV urged civilians to turn him in. Local governors offered a $60,000 bounty. Videos showed locals forming search parties. Let me show you this clip of news coverage of the F-15 shoot-down and search operation.
Tonight, the U.S. military in a dangerous race against time to find a service member who was in an F-15E Strike Eagle when it appears to have been shot down by Iran, according to a U.S. official. A second airman, the official says, was rescued alive and taken out of the country for medical treatment. Iranian state TV says these photos show wreckage of the American fighter jet. Weapons experts confirmed to NBC News the photos appear to show an F-15. It's the first time a manned U.S. aircraft has been shot down behind enemy lines during this war. These videos show U.S. aircraft flying low over the mountainous region, scrambling to find the airmen before Iranian forces do. 3 U.S. aircraft involved in the search and rescue operation were also hit by Iranian fire, according to a U.S. official. A single pilot, A-10 Warthog, was struck, the official says, making it to Kuwaiti airspace where the pilot safely ejected and the A-10 crashed. This video shows Iranians firing at U.S. helicopters. 2 Blackhawks involved in the search were hit, according to the official, who says there were minor injuries to U.S. service members. It all comes just 2 days after President Trump said this.
They have no anti-aircraft equipment. Their radar is 100% annihilated.
Iran still has air defenses, shoulder-fire missiles, and even guns, all of which can threaten aircraft. Today on Iranian state TV, a bounty put on the missing airman's head. This anchor saying if you capture the enemy pilots alive and hand them over to the police, you will receive a precious prize. That prize, roughly $60,000. 4 other manned U.S. aircraft have gone down since this conflict began. Friendly fire took out 3 jets in Kuwait, while 6 service members died after a refueling plane crashed in Iraq last month. The F-15 is a workhorse of the U.S. military and has been used extensively in Iran. And tonight, it's at the center of a potentially dangerous inflection point in this war.
Here is where it gets extraordinary. The CIA launched a deception campaign spreading false intel inside Iran that the airmen had already been found, while simultaneously using classified tracking technology to actually locate him. 2 Black Hawk helicopters were hit during the rescue operations, and A-10 Warthog providing covering fire near the strait was also struck. 2 C-130 aircraft malfunctioned during the extraction and had to be intentionally destroyed by U.S. Air Forces to prevent them from falling into the Iranian hands. The wounded colonel spent more than 24 hours evading capture, hiding in a mountain crevice. Delta Force and SEAL Team 6 were deployed. Ultimately, 155 aircraft were involved, including bombers, fighters, and a rescue craft. Trump called the rescue, quote, an Easter miracle, end quote. Let me show you this clip of Trump announcing the rescue of both airmen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's a great honor to be with you, and happy Easter. We had a great Easter. This is one of our better Easters, I think, in a lot of different ways. I can say militarily, it's been one of the best. So, good afternoon. We have quite a bit to discuss. We'll go into pretty good detail. And we have the people that are most involved. We'll give you exactitude. And we're here today to celebrate the success of one of the largest, most complex, most harrowing combat searches. I guess you would call it a search and rescue mission ever attempted by the military. Generally, when planes are knocked down in war, especially when you're fighting a strong group, an evil group, you can't really do this because you send in 200 men to pick up one, and it's something that's usually not attempted as much as you want to attempt, and bad things happen to that 1 or 2. And in this case, we did 2, and it might not have been attempted before, but we did, and we had great talent. We got a little luck too, I would say, and we were helped by a lot of people, a lot of great people, and it was an honor to be involved with it. It's very historic. This is a rescue that's very historic. It'll go down in the books. Late Thursday night, an American F-15 fighter jet went down deep inside enemy territory in Iran while participating in Operation Epic Fury, where we're doing unbelievably well, well at a level that nobody's ever seen before. The entire country can be taken out in one night and that night might be tomorrow night. Both members of the crew ejected from the aircraft and landed alive on Iranian soil. I immediately was asked to make a decision. I ordered the U.S. Armed Forces to do whatever was necessary to bring our brave warriors back home. A risky decision, because we could have ended up with 100 dead as opposed to 1 or 2. It's a hard decision to make. But in the United States military, we leave no American behind. We don't do it. Within hours, our armed forces deployed 21 military aircraft into hostile airspace, many flying at very low altitude, being shot by bullets. You bring rifles into play when you're going that low, but there are also certain advantages. And in broad daylight over Iran for 7 hours, at times facing very, very heavy enemy fire. We have a helicopter that's got a lot of bullets in it. It's amazing. We just realized how good those weapons are. Those our machines are. Nobody has the equipment that we have, and nobody has the military that we have. Not even close.
And both airmen came home. That was remarkable. Dangerous, complex rescue operation by the men and women of our military. Period. And frankly, they shouldn't have even been put in that situation by an irresponsible, unhinged, and unqualified madman. Now, about that ceasefire, on April 7th, a 2-week truce was announced. Iranians poured into the streets to celebrate. Markets surged, oil prices dropped. Trump posted, quote, "a big day for world peace," end quote. You don't get to strike countries and then call a ceasefire and call it peace. Like you're the savior. And by the way, just before the ceasefire was announced, they were actually making human chains around the power plants and different infrastructure in Iran because they were so terrified that they were going to blow it up, which is just wrong. And again, it's a war crime. And the poor people of Iran have already been through far too much as it is. But here's what unraveled in less than 24 hours. Pakistan's prime minister said that the ceasefire covered, quote, everywhere, including Lebanon, end quote. Netanyahu immediately said, quote, "No, it does not include Lebanon," end quote. Trump ended up backing Netanyahu. Surprise, surprise. And Israel launched what Lebanon's health ministry called its heaviest bombardment since the war began, killing hundreds. Let me show you this clip of news coverage of Israel bombing Lebanon after a ceasefire announcement.
Ceasefire is not necessarily the word that comes to mind when looking at these scenes of violence and chaos from the streets of Lebanon today as a result of the most intense series of Israeli strikes since the beginning of the war. We saw piles of charred cars at major intersections, mountains of rubble clogging the roads, entire apartment blocks razed to the ground, panicked residents running through the streets trying to figure out where the different booms and thuds of airstrikes were coming from because they were striking in central, densely populated Beirut without warning. And this resulted in one of the deadliest days between Israel and the Iran-backed militant group since the beginning of the war, with at least 110 people killed, but over 800, if not more, wounded. So that death toll, according to the Lebanese health ministry, was very likely to rise in the coming hours. And this all on the very day that international and regional mediators had been insisting that Lebanon was part of the wider ceasefire deal between Israel and the United States on one side and Iran on the other. But we saw that those hopes were very quickly dashed by the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's statement, which was then followed by this series of very deadly strikes.
And that's just wrong. They need to stop. It immediately sparked the reclosure of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran accused the U.S. of violating the terms. Iran's parliamentary speaker said 3 of the 10 points in their peace proposal had already been broken within hours. Iran reclosed the Strait of Hormuz in response to the Lebanon strikes. Only 4 ships managed to pass through on the first day of the so-called ceasefire. All dry cargo, no oil tankers. Experts are calling the agreement, quote, extremely shaky and brittle, end quote. As of today, April 11th, the Strait of Hormuz is effectively still closed, with mines all over in the water. Negotiations are scheduled for Islamabad this week. Vice President Vance described the truce as, quote, fragile, end quote, and the rest of the world is watching. Iran has actually been, just like Trump's been making a lot of those AI propaganda videos about Iran and the war and all that, Iran's been making them as well in response, and they've been quite interesting. Let me show you a clip of that. Let's come back home, because while all eyes were in the Middle East, the Epstein cover-up machine was in full operation. On April 2nd, President Trump fired Attorney General Pam Bondi. Reports say he was furious with how she handled the Epstein files. The DOJ had been compelled by law to release over 6 million pages of documents, but withheld roughly half of them. There's still over half of the files that haven't been released. A lot of the worst of the and there's already been some pretty damaging stuff that's been put out, but so it's crazy that he acts and thinks like a juvenile, literally.
Have you apologized to President Trump, all of you who participated in those impeachment hearings against Donald Trump?
Among the withheld documents, FBI interviews with a survivor who accuses Donald Trump of sexual assault as a minor. Let me show you this clip of Pam Bondi, congressional testimony on the Epstein files.
You all should be apologizing. You sit here and you attack the president, and I am not going to have it. I'm not going to put up with it. You know, all they want to do, the American people need to know this. They are talking about Epstein today. This has been around since the Obama administration. This administration released over 3 million pages of documents, over 3 million, and Donald Trump signed that law to release all of those documents. He is the most transparent president in the nation's history. And none of them asked Merrick Garland over the last 4 years one word about Jeffrey Epstein. How ironic is that? You know why? Because Donald Trump, the Dow right now is over $50,000. I don't know why you're laughing. You're a great stock trader, as I hear, Raskin. The Dow is over 50,000 right now. The S&P at almost 7,000. And the NASDAQ smashing records. Americans' 401ks and retirement savings are booming. That's what we should be talking about. We should be talking about making Americans safe. We should be talking about, what does a Dow have to do with anything? That's what they just asked. Are you kidding?
Mr. Jordan, Mr. Jordan.
Committee will be in order.
Mr. Jordan, am I going to get an extra 45 seconds added to my time?
The committee will be in order. The time belongs to the gentleman from Texas. Ms. Bondi, the Attorney General can respond.
Thank you. The Dow has shattered 50,000 for the first time. This is crazy. They said it couldn't be done in 4 years, yet President Trump has done it in 1 year.
The House Oversight Committee, on a bipartisan vote, had already subpoenaed Bondi to appear for a closed-door deposition on April 14th. Republican members, including Nancy Mace and Lauren Boebert, voted with Democrats to compel her testimony. That's how serious this is. And then on April 8th, the Department of Justice announced that Pam Bondi would not appear after all. Their argument, she was subpoenaed as an attorney general, and since she's been fired, the subpoena no longer applies, although the congressmen and women say otherwise and say that she's still liable to come in for that, or they'll file a new subpoena. Let me show you this clip of House Oversight Committee response to Bondi refusing to appear.
What the actual subpoena motion made on the actual committee floor specifically said to the Honorable Pam Bondi, period. And regardless of what James Comer sent out, these subpoenas are for the person, regardless of whether they're currently in their position or not. And at the end of the day,
does one take precedent over the other? Sorry to interrupt, but just trying to understand, like, based on what you said in the language that was spoken, it didn't include her title, but then in the written word, it did. Which one takes precedent?
Legally, at the end of the day, if somebody is under subpoena, it doesn't matter if they change jobs, if they have a job, if they don't, they're expected to appear before the Congress. We have also put in place interviews for former attorney generals. We interviewed Bill Barr, who was a former AG. And we had the Clintons come in, a former president and former secretary of state. So there's plenty of precedent here to actually get information. And at the end of the day, you have a person who is the person in charge of the release of the files, who said the files were on her desk. We're demanding the truth and we're demanding answers. And the fact now that the White House wants to play games and essentially continue this cover up and not allow her to come and testify, that's not acceptable. She must come forward. And if she doesn't come forward under her legal subpoena, which still stands, by the way, then we will hold Pam Bondi in contempt and we'll begin that process within the Congress.
The ranking Democrat Representative Robert Garcia called it what it is. Quote, she's trying to get out of her legal obligation to testify about the Epstein files and the White House cover-up, end quote. Nancy Mace, a Republican, said, quote, Pam Bondi cannot escape accountability simply because she no longer holds the office, end quote. And Representative Garcia is now threatening contempt of Congress charges. Speaker Mike Johnson, largely silent. I mean, are you surprised? Speaker Jeffries or somebody needs to take over. Exactly the kind of enabler that Marjorie Taylor Greene is now calling out by name. The survivors deserve justice, and every day this administration delays, obstructs, or deflects, they are choosing power over those survivors. And then, just on Thursday, April 8th, Melania walked up to the White House podium, the same podium Trump had just used to address the nation about Iran, and issued a statement denying any connection to Jeffrey Epstein. She called reports linking her to Epstein, quote, unfounded and baseless lies, end quote, and, quote, false smears, end quote, from politically motivated individuals. She said, and this is important, that Congress should hold hearings for victims. Let me show you this clip of Melania Trump in the White House statement.
The lies linking me with the disgraceful Jeffrey Epstein need to end today. The individuals lying about me are devoid of ethical standards, humility, and respect. I do not object to their ignorance, but rather I reject their mean-spirited attempts to defame my reputation. I never been friends with Epstein. Donald and I were invited to the same parties as Epstein from time to time, since overlapping in social circles is common in New York City and Palm Beach. To be clear, I never had a relationship with Epstein or his accomplice, Maxwell. My email reply to Maxwell cannot be categorized as anything more than casual correspondence. My polite reply to her email doesn't amount to anything more than a trivial note. I am not Epstein's victim. Epstein did not introduce me to Donald Trump.
What?
I met my husband by chance at a New York City party in 1998. This initial encounter with my husband is documented in a detail in my book, Melania.
Here's what we know from the actual files. In 2002, Epstein's files contain an email signed with Love Melania sent to Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's convicted sex trafficker, that says, "Dear G, how are you? Nice story about Jeffrey Epstein in New York Magazine. You look great on the picture. I know you are very busy flying all over the world. How is Palm Beach? I cannot wait to go down." This is in the federal files. That is documented. There are photos of Melania with both Epstein and Maxwell at public events and forums. Flight logs reportedly placed Trump on Epstein's jet multiple times in the 1990s. And now we learn the DOJ withheld FBI interview transcripts from a survivor who accused Trump of sexual assault as a minor. Melania saying Congress should hear from victims. Congress has been trying to do exactly that. Let me show you this clip.
I call on Congress to provide the women who have been victimized by Epstein with a public hearing specifically centered around the survivors. Give these victims their opportunity to testify under oath in front of Congress with the power of sworn testimony.
But I just have to start with something absolutely mind-blowingly bananas that happened today. I mean, you probably didn't know that Melania Trump was scheduled to deliver a rare public statement today. But even if you did know, you probably didn't guess she was going to single-handedly reignite the whole Epstein scandal in the process. And when she reached the podium today, in a very self-important way, she cut right to the chase.
Good afternoon. The lies linking me with the disgraceful Jeffrey Epstein need to end today.
I mean, well, good afternoon to you, Melania Trump. I mean, I was watching that in my office. First of all, it popped up on the screen. And I was like, what is happening here? And I was thinking, am I hallucinating? What the hell is going on? Whose idea was this? I had lots of questions. I mean, I guess one possibility is that it's a sign the war really is going that badly. We're certainly going to talk to John Kerry about that. Another is that they are trying to get ahead of a story that a reporter is working on. I guess we'll learn if that's the case soon enough. Who knows? Now, during her remarks, the First Lady went on to denounce what she described as false smears against her, citing numerous fake images and statements on social media, and saying she said that she wanted to clear her good name. From what exactly? Because, again, the unavoidable question on everyone's mind was, why now? Why at all? Why ever? I mean, most people hearing her remarks probably had never even heard any of the so-called lies she was responding to. According to MS Now, lots of White House staffers were caught off guard. And Trump himself claimed he knew nothing about her statement, though that seems a little hard to believe. especially when you consider that Melania's own spokesperson told the New York Times that the president knew beforehand that she was going to make a statement. But, I mean, regardless of who knew what and when they knew it inside the White House, nobody on the outside was betting that the First Lady would give a surprise speech on Jeffrey Epstein. And when I say nobody was betting on it, I mean literally nobody. Because ahead of the speech, the prediction market, Kalshi, took wagers on what Melania would say during her remarks. Now, the anticipated topics range from education to peace and security to AI. They must have seen the robot. Who knows? But nobody put their money on a random denial of her relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. The few lucky gamblers did manage to make a few bucks betting that she would mention children or minors, so I guess there's that. The whole thing was even more bizarre, given that the First Lady seemed to formally stage her remarks to match the visuals of the president's primetime address to the nation on Iran last week. And having worked in multiple White Houses and been a part of preparing for many of these formal speeches, I can tell you where you give a speech is basically a signal of how important you think it is. And let me just tell you, Melania was exuding self-importance this afternoon. So now that Melania Trump has put Epstein back in the news, congratulations, Melania. Let's just take a look at how she described their relationship.
I never had a relationship with Epstein or his accomplice, Maxwell.
Well, a relationship can be a flexible term, I suppose, but we do know, of course, that Melania Trump has been photographed with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell over a number of years. I mean, there's the picture of Melania with her future husband and the two of them at a February 2000 party, and another of her with her husband and Ghislaine at a fashion show in September of that year. You can see it right there on the screen. And the Epstein files include an email dated October 23rd, 2002, addressed to G. You can also see that email. The sender asked, "How is Palm Beach? I cannot wait to go down. Give me a call when you're back in New York. Have a great time." And ends, "Love, Melania." Well, here's how Melania Trump described that email today.
My email reply to Maxwell cannot be categorized as anything more than casual correspondence.
Casual correspondence, I suppose, maybe? Although in her response to Melania, Ghislaine addresses her as, quote, Sweet Pea, an apparent nickname that seems a little more intimate than the casual correspondence the First Lady described. And to be clear, Melania's initial email to Maxwell doesn't seem to be a reply at all, which is how she described it today. It looks like she initiated that outreach herself. And just about 2.5 weeks after that exchange, Melania and Maxwell appeared to have connected again at an event in New York, according to this photograph of them, accompanied by Donald Trump and supermodel Naomi Campbell. So it definitely looks like the two had something of a relationship. The files also offer another detail relating to some other things that the First Lady said earlier today.
Epstein did not introduce me to Donald Trump. My name has never appeared in court documents, depositions, victim statements, or FBI in interviews surrounding the Epstein matter.
It appears that second part about Melania's name is decidedly not true. In fact, Melania's name does appear in at least one FBI interview with an unidentified witness, a witness who told the agents that, quote, Epstein introduced Melania Trump to Donald Trump. Of course, we don't know if or how that witness would know that, but it would appear to contradict what Melania and her former modeling agent have been saying about how she and Trump met for years.
And the administration she lives in has been blocking it at every turn. The American people aren't just asking for speaking. They have been speaking. They want justice for the survivors and closure, healing. So where are we politically? Over 70 lawmakers across party lines have now called for either Trump's impeachment or the invocation of the 25th Amendment. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said that the civilization threat is a threat of genocide and merits removal from office. Representative John Larson has filed articles of impeachment citing serial usurpation of the Congressional War Power, Representative Ilhan Omar asked, quote, "When will it be enough for my Republican colleagues to grow spines?" End quote. And I have to agree with her. Let me show you this clip of congressional calling for the 25th Amendment or impeachment.
And Bay Area Congress members Ro Khanna and Nancy Pelosi, among more than 50 House Democrats, calling for Congress to invoke the 25th Amendment to remove President Trump from office. That was in response to his social media post earlier today, where he wrote of Iran, quote, "A whole civilization will die tonight."
He's threatening the entire destruction of a civilization. He is calling Iranians animals. He is showing a total disregard for the humanity of people in Iran, in Gaza, in Cuba. This is a moral crime. It is a war crime. We need to be demanding that Congress convene today, and we need to be invoking the 25th Amendment.
We heard statements from a person whose mental stability has to be questioned for the statements that he has made about obliterating a civilization. A civilization. While the Republicans won't be seen not willing to exercise the 25th Amendment, we have to do that in the public.
Bay Area Representatives Eric Swalwell, Zoe Lofgren, and Latifah Simon echoed Khanna's call for those proceedings. The 25th Amendment outlines how a vice president and members of the president's cabinet can involuntarily strip a president of his powers if the president is declared unfit for office, physically or mentally.
But here's the cold, hard truth of the moment. Section 4 of the 25th Amendment has never been invoked in American history. It requires the vice president and a majority of the cabinet to act. J.D. Vance was literally on a stage in Budapest this week praising Viktor Orban. The White House called all removal efforts, quote, pathetic, end quote. And Republicans still hold both chambers. Without a break in the Senate, conviction on the impeachment is nearly impossible. The political path is narrow, but the moral case, by any honest measure, has never been stronger or more bipartisan. What we are watching is an administration that is testing every single day just how much the institutions of this country can absorb before they break. And while all of this plays out, the billionaire class is holding forums, the Epstein class, making investments, protecting their portfolios. But what about the rest of us? The near closure of the Strait of Hormuz for the past 6 weeks has sent global energy prices soaring. Even after the ceasefire announcement, oil prices are still above pre-war levels. Shipping companies say it will take at minimum 2 months after any permanent ceasefire to resume normal operations in the Persian Gulf. The supply chain ripple effects are already being priced in everywhere. Gas, groceries, imported goods. This summer is about to be expensive, and the people who caused that chaos are still in power, still enriching their donors class, and still blocking accountability at every turn. Let me show you this clip of news coverage of gas prices and consumer cost increases related to Hormuz closure.
Gas prices are spiking, and a single waterway in the Middle East is why. An official from Iran's Revolutionary Guard announced it has closed the Strait of Hormuz, warning that any vessel attempting to use the waterway would be targeted. About a fifth of the world's oil travels through that strait, and now it essentially can't. Any disruption to the global oil supply can drive up oil and gas prices, and the price of a barrel of Brent crude was hovering around $83 on March 3rd. That's up about 25% from the start of the war. Planes, trains, cars, ships, and manufacturing equipment all rely on oil. It's embedded in nearly every step of every supply chain, and when oil gets more expensive, often so does everything else. If the war is short and new Iranian leadership is able to reach a deal with the US and Israel, American consumers may see higher prices at the gas pump for a few weeks. But if the war drags on, or escalates. Economists warn that energy prices could skyrocket, potentially pushing the U.S. economy towards stagflation, given other concerns about slowing job growth and lingering inflation. President Donald Trump has said that he expects the war to last 4 to 5 weeks, but added that the U.S. military has the capability to go for far longer than that. Given the uncertain timeline, there's growing concerns and questions about what this war will mean for the U.S. and world economies.
The No King's Day 3 protests reflected a country that is paying attention, and we need to stay in the streets and at the ballot box, because those two tools still belong to us. Let me bring this home. This week, we witnessed a president post genocide-adjacent threats on Easter Sunday while mocking a major world religion. A military rescue mission inside Iran that involved Delta Force, SEAL Team 6, 155 aircraft, and more bravery than this administration deserves to claim. A ceasefire that started unraveling within hours because Netanyahu refused to stop bombing Lebanon. A fired attorney general defying a federal subpoena about the Epstein cover-up. A first lady denying a friendship that is in the federal record. Over 70 lawmakers calling for the removal of the sitting president, and an economy being set on fire while the billionaire Epstein class makes moves. This administration is not above the law. These survivors are not disposable. This democracy is not their personal property. Stay informed, stay vocal, and stay ready. I'm Andrea, and this has been Exposed News Outlet. If this episode mattered to you, share it. Hit subscribe and leave a comment below. Let me know what you think, because the algorithm does not want you seeing this, and the only way we grow is you spreading the word. So thank you for that. Links to all my social media accounts are below, and I'll see you next time in the next video. Until then, be kind to yourself and be kind to others. Stay safe.